Hello everyone, welcome to Lily's Wild Adventure. She just gave a rich girl a facial makeover with sulfuric acid, but sadly, she cleaned up all evidence like she totally tied the two up with drugs. They're like little dumplings. Talk about control. When her boyfriend sent the peace-offering text, Lily was busy admiring herself in the mirror. Her revenge bracelet was shining brighter than her self-esteem. Little did Lily know, her skin situation was going down like a bad comedy, with dark spots spreading like weeds and her skin feeling like sandpaper. The makeup artist saw this and reported it to her agent like she spotted an alien, but the agent acted like, "I knew it all along." During break time, a guy claiming to be a prosecutor popped up to tell Lily he was investigating her favorite plastic surgery clinic. It sounded like something strange. The clinic was suspected of getting human tissues for beautifying procedures. Anyone who had surgery had to take meds for life. Talk about the secrets of the plastic surgery. Otherwise, they might end up with mental breakdowns and skin ulcers. It's basically a cautionary tale for the young ones. The prosecutor called Lily the most prominent victim, like the main attraction in a mall, hoping she'd help expose the entire shady operation. On the outside, Lily looked calm, but inside she was as uneasy as a spicy taco, trying to interrupt the prosecutor with her old tricks. Just as she reached out, someone suddenly called her real name, and it hit her like thunder. The prosecutor dropped the bomb of evidence showing she incited others to commit crimes. That night her car was parked near the crime scene. Talk about a blockbuster plot twist. Faced with the evidence, she was scrambling, trying to find her dropped phone. Reality was crazier than any soap opera. Even with the proof in front of her, she insisted it was all just coincidence, a tactic for protective sailing. The prosecutor didn't push her, leaving just a file full of materials, while Lily tremblingly dug out her early cosmetic surgery photos so vintage. One glance at those hospital records, and her anxiety boiled over like water. She felt she was about to be exposed. Helpless, she relied on drugs for a moment of peace, but then an ad for a newcomer flashed on TV, reminding her of the attention she had lost. The assistant followed Lily's orders like an ant on a hot pan. The next morning she showed up with a utility knife at the amusement park to find the vacationing newcomer. But in the calm eyes of the girl, she slowly dropped the weapon. Looks like they really had a meeting of hearts. The company would keep pushing out new stars, and Lily realized she wasn't the only star here. Nothing was truly irreplaceable. After long-term drug abuse, Lily started seeing hallucinations. One day a blue butterfly appeared in the makeup mirror. When she turned to look again, all she saw was air moving. Felt like she was really seeing the spirit world. When the birthday cake was pushed in front of her, a swarm of blue butterflies suddenly appeared. To others, it was romantic, but to Lily, it was a terrifying alarm bell. She frantically waved at the air and finally knocked over the birthday cake, leaving everyone stunned. But the hallucinations didn't stop. They continued to dance wildly in her senses, and those strawberry decorations on stage seemed to come to life. All kinds of dolls started to move their eyes oddly, and Lily's screams echoed through the studio, but no one could save her. Just before plunging into darkness, her dilated pupils still flickered with a desire for beauty. When Lily woke up, it felt like the world had abandoned her. She immediately contacted her agent, but the half-hearted response on the other end made her realize she was now a fallen wife. Heartbroken, she couldn't stop throwing up, blaming everything on her useless assistant. It was a meltdown limit reached. Under the gaze of passers-by, she walked into the rain-soaked street. The pearls mixed with her tears seemed to promise a comeback. In an instant, her heart felt like a thunderstorm. Silver-red lights twisted like a starry sky, dazzling her senses. With the camera flashes and the red carpet, she heard her favorite cheers, as if she were back on stage. However, the image in the mirror revealed her disheveled face. Her once luxuriant hair now fell like scattered golden needles, reflecting her hardships. To save Lily, the assistant exposed all that plastic surgery info like a plan to shatter fairytale legends. When reporters swarmed in, the agent asked her to cover up the truth, truly the climax of a commercial drama. The flashing lights of exposure made her blood boil again, while the cheers from the audience seemed to vanish. In place of cheers, she faced the stern expression of the prosecutor, and that's when she understood what she was up against. Of course, indefinitely going to do it. I'll show you exactly what you want. I'm not here to harm my own wings. What you are doing doesn't need to hurt others. The crucial point is, don't forget about yourself. That's right. I have never ever been loved. Nobody requires me, so I am left with. I have firmly made up my mind. I have firmly made up my mind. I've 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 made up my mind.